computer. Good morning and welcome to another one of our bookshop events. It's a Monday morning here. If you're watching it virtually, it could be any day of the week or any time of the week. But we're here to talk with the brilliant MG Leonard. We have got this wonderful book, Hunt for the Golden Scarab, and we've even got the painted edges version. Look at that. Woo. So all of you who've ordered it, those of you online, you will also receive a postcard and also a bookmark. And the school that orders the most, in fact, the two schools that order the most, are also going to get this rather gorgeous poster. But Maya, thank you so much for coming to join us. And I trust your week has started well.
Yes, obviously it's only been a few hours since the week started, but so far nothing's gone wrong. So let's hope it stays that way.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Now, listen, we'll be here for about 50 minutes. Maya's going to start shortly and she'll do a 35 to 40-minute presentation. Then we'll do Q&A. Please, could you start taking questions from the children and put them into the Q&A function and use the chat box if you have to. But without further ado, let me hand you over to the brilliant MG Leonard.
Hello, everybody. It's delightful to be with you on a Monday morning. I am in the what I call it a cabin. Some people call it a shed at the bottom of my garden. This is where I write my books and come up with ideas. And obviously, you can see my extensive research library behind me. It's where I read about all of the subjects that I like to explore in my books. And so what I thought I would do today, I've got a presentation that's going to take up most of the screen, but hopefully I will be in a box beside it because I've got so much that I want to share with you that inspired Hunt for the Golden Scarab. And I want to kind of give you an insight into how a writer's brain works when they come up with these crazy mad adventures. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen and hopefully this will work. Let's just see if I share that and I do that. Hopefully now what you can see is a giant image of the book with
Looks
hieroglyphs
great.
behind it. Excellent. And me in the corner. So without further ado, for those of you who have never read one of my books and you don't know anything about me, I do have some facts that I think it's important for us to share. The first thing is that I love beetles. It's probably the one thing that nearly everybody knows about me. I have pet beetles. I also have a whole collection of dead beetles that I keep in frames around the house. I'm obsessed with insects. I'm the vice president of a charity called Bug Life, and I spend a lot of time trying to explain to people just how important insects are for the natural world and why we should preserve habitats and not use things like pesticides. So I love beetles, which is probably why I'm writing a book called Hunt for the Golden Scarab, because scarab is a type of beetle, but we will get onto that in a bit. The other thing that you should know about me is that more than anything else, I love adventure stories. I loved reading them when I was young, and I love writing them as a grown-up. So on the board right now, what you should see is a whole selection of adventure stories, all written by me. And as you can see with Beetle Boy, I do write adventures about beetles. But I also write adventures set on trains, on train journeys all around the world, because I'm really interested in travel. But I'm also an avid bird watcher, and so I like detective stories, and I have a whole series of books called The Twitchers, which is about a group of young bird watchers who use their bird watching skills to solve crimes. So you can get a flavour from these books of the type of stories that I love to write. I love something that needs to be solved. I love high action. I love something that's thrilling, that is a page turner. And of course, I love a spectacularly dramatic ending. So these are the kind of stories that I write. And I'd just like to share a little bit about the books that I really loved when I was your age. So when I was your age, these books were some of my favorite books. And maybe some of you have read these books as well. I loved The Secret Garden. That's probably one of my favorite books of all time ever written. Um, and I really loved all of the Chronicles of Narnia, all the Narnia books, but The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe for me was the most magical. And I love magical fantasy, and Howl's Moving Castle. Some of you may have seen the animated movie of this book. I think the book is better, to be honest. It's more dramatic. But yeah, Howl's Moving Castle is also a book that I loved. And when I was thinking about what kind of story that I might want to write next after I'd finished writing the Twitches series, I was thinking about all the books that I loved to read. And one of the things that I realized about these three books in front of you, but actually many more children's books, is that they do have something in common. And that thing is doors. The Secret Garden is a door, a hidden door that Mary finds the key for, and when she opens it, behind that door there is an overgrown, forgotten garden that becomes her playground. And I loved the idea of a secret door. And of course, Lucy in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, she discovers a wardrobe door that opens up into a magical kingdom called Narnia. And in Howl's Moving Castle, the door to the castle is simultaneously in four different places, four different worlds at the same time. So you can go out the door and end up in four different places. And I have always loved the mystery of what is behind a door. So when I started off thinking about the hunt for the Golden Scarab, I did think like I'd quite like to write something about a door to an amazing place or an amazing time. That was the first seed of an idea that started to grow in my head. And then the next thing that I thought of, and this is how my brain works, is well, to open doors, you really do need keys. And I like interesting keys, non-typical keys. So obviously in the Secret Garden, it is a big iron key that Mary has to find in the house to open that door. There isn't a key to the magic door to Narnia. It just seems to be you have to be the right person at the right time, because other people who go to that wardrobe don't find the door. And so there was something about the timing and the people of opening that door that was the key to opening it. And with Howl's Moving Castle, there's a special kind of contraption that you can choose which place you want to open into. But these are all different types of keys. So I started thinking about, magical doors maybe, but what kind of keys should open them? That was the first thing that I thought about. And the more I thought about keys, the more I realized that actually music has a key. When people talk about what key is a piece of music in, it's to do with what collection of notes you need to play it. And I was like, oh, music has a key. What if the key was music? And I also thought about time signatures, because every piece of music has got a certain time signature, whether it's got a 3/4 beat, which is like a waltz, and it's like 1 2 3 1 2 3, or whether it's like a 4/4, which is much more standard, 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. This is called a time signature, and that is when my brain started to really fizz and crackle. And I don't know if you play a musical instrument, but I try and play the piano and a little bit of guitar. I'm not very good at either of them, and I often struggle with time signatures and keys to understand what they were. And I was thinking, wow, imagine if your skill with a musical instrument was the key to opening a special door. And then I discovered something really cool, which is that young people, so young people up to about the age of 25, maybe 25, 26, 27, that kind of age, have much better hearing, are more sensitive to high and low frequencies than older adults. When you get to my age, you start to lose the highest and the lowest sounds in your hearing. You just get this middle range, which means that children are able to hear and feel, even sense sounds that grown-ups can't. And I thought, oh, that would be amazing. What if the only people who could open these special doors with musical instruments were young people? And that was the beginning of my idea for the Time Keys series, because Hunt for the Golden Scarab is the first book in a series. So let me introduce you to the characters that you're going to meet in this epic adventure. Here they are. Here are our heroes. On the left there, you can see Sim. He is the boy who you meet right at the beginning of Hunt for the Golden Scarab. He's the protagonist of this story. And he loves to play the piano. And he is really good at martial arts. His mum, who you can see next to him, Calidora, she's not really like most other mums. She teaches at a dojo. She's a black belt in Aikido, in Judo, in Tai Chi and karate. She's brilliant at martial arts. So every day she and Sim spar, they train. And so he's done this ever since he's a little kid. So he's, without ever doing any belts, he's an absolute ninja at martial arts. And these two are the characters that you meet at the beginning of the story. You realize quite quickly that Calidora, who is very secretive, is actually in some kind of trouble and that they're on the run. But Sim doesn't know why or who's after them or anything like that at all. Now, as you can see from this illustration of Calidora, she plays the flute. That's her magical instrument. The first person that Sim goes to talk to about this strange, secretive life that he's living with his mum is Sim's best friend, Nelson. And you can see Nelson there. Nelson's really smart, really clever, really knowledgeable about anything to do with solving mysteries or any kind of cryptic, secretive society type stuff. That's his jam. He loves to like research whether the pyramids were built by aliens and things like that. So Sim goes to Nelson and says something's going on with mum, like she's got secrets. And so Nelson gets dragged into the story at this point. And then about a third of the way through, you meet Jeopardy. And Jeopardy plays the trumpet, as you can see from this image. And it turns out that Jeopardy is Sim's cousin. And these are the main characters that you get to hang out with when you go on this epic adventure to Egypt. So the first thing that I had to think of, I created the characters and I had this concept that music would open these doors, and I wanted these doors to be doors in time. I realized that I'd quite like to go to certain cool places in history, but which one would I pick first? There are so many times that you can go to. And that was a real puzzler for me because I just thought if you could go anywhere in time, when and where would you go? And I wrote a whole list of places that I thought were super cool and super interesting. And I stared at this list for quite a long time. And of course, my love for beetles drew me to ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt is such a cool place and time to explore. And I thought if I were a time traveler, I would love to go back to ancient Egypt. And so I looked up some cool, awesome facts about ancient Egypt. And I've got some here to share with you. One of the things that was pretty cool in ancient Egypt is that they had gods for everything, whether it's like, you know, to help people through the afterlife or to like stop dangers or like, you know, gods that were of the sun or the moon. They had over 2,000 gods, so many so that I did try and learn about all of them, but it just got too confusing. So I only know the main ones. But what I loved about the ancient Egyptians is to the ancient Egyptians, cats are sacred animals. Most families kept a pet cat, not just for good luck, but also to kill the rats so that the rats didn't eat their food. So cats were both very practical and they were kind of worshipped. both Egyptian men and women wore makeup, which is really interesting because nowadays, you know, mostly we think of women wearing makeup, but Egyptian men wore makeup too, because in those days they believed that makeup had magical healing powers, and it was a powerful thing to paint your face. And one of the things that I think is spectacular, obviously, I'm a writer, I love writing words, but did you know that the Egyptians are one of the first civilizations to have created a written language? And the alphabet that they created had more than 700 hieroglyphs. They're so incredible. It's too big a language, I think, to hold in your head. But my favourite ones are the hieroglyphs of vultures. I do love bird watching, and I loved learning about all the different bird hieroglyphs. Of course, we know the ancient Egyptians for pyramids. That's the one thing that if you say to someone, what do you know about ancient Egypt? They always go, oh, the pyramids. And the pyramids were tombs for pharaohs and their families. Pharaohs were like kings. But not all kings were buried in pyramids. In fact, not that many pharaohs were known to be buried in pyramids. Most of the famous pharaohs are buried in the Valley of the Kings, and we'll get onto that in a bit. But the afterlife was super important to the Egyptians because they believed that, like, after you died, they thought it was very important to preserve a dead body, a dead person's body, through mummification, because they think that your soul lives on in the afterlife forever and you're going to need that body back. That's why they took such good care of it, wrapping it in bandages. And like they wrapped it in so many bandages. It was such an incredible process to mummify a human that if you unraveled them all, it would be like nearly a mile, like 1.6 kilometers is the number that I've discovered the most. 1.6 kilometers length of bandages, which is crazy. And they were usually made from the dead person's bedding sheets. They would be ripped into strips. But my favorite thing about ancient Egyptians is of course, they invented many things like calendars, clocks, pen and paper, but they also invented locks and keys. And I thought, well, that is a sign that Egypt must be the place that I go to in the first book, because if they invented keys and my story is about time keys, I must go to Egypt first. Now, it's very important when you write a story that you learn as much about the place that you're going to write about as possible. So I actually went to Egypt. That was the first thing I did. This is a picture of me on a boat. We were on a big cruise ship. And what you can see behind me is the Nile. And I cruised up and down the Nile, visiting lots of incredible temples and places like that, so that when I write this story, hopefully you will feel like you're in Egypt. Because the thing about this story is that you start off in modern Egypt. So you'll get a sense of what Luxor and modern Egypt smells and sounds and feels like to be there. But then, of course, we want to travel to ancient Egypt. And so much of ancient Egypt still exists today because they were so incredible. Their stonework was so incredible. It still exists now. So here are a few photos of me in ancient Egypt. Up on the top left, I went to this incredible Nubian village in Aswan where they kept pet crocodiles. I don't know if you can see, but on that image, they have a little hairband around the crocodile's mouth so that when I picked it up, it didn't bite me. But it was quite incredible. I never thought anyone had pet crocodiles, but in Egypt they do. And there down the bottom left is a perfect example of another reason why I was attracted to ancient Egypt as my first subject. Because the Egyptians really revered the scarab. What you can see next to that picture of me in the hat is an ancient Egyptian scarab hieroglyph. And scarabs were very important to the Egyptians, but more about that in a bit. And there you can see me in one of the ruins of a temple, which, like, I don't know if you could see on the wall there, those hieroglyphs. The fact that these carvings are over 3,000 years old and they're still really beautiful is quite astonishing. You kind of think, God, what must they have looked like 3,000 years ago when they were coloured in? They probably looked stunningly beautiful. So I went up and down the Nile, but the most important place for me to visit was the Valley of the Kings, because that is where all the pharaohs are buried. And as you can see from this picture, these are access ways into the tombs. The tombs of the pharaohs are deep, deep underground. You have to sometimes go down like a huge pathway that's like the length of a football pitch, just going into the rock to get there. But the thing that I went to do was because I really wanted to go and visit the tomb of Tutankhamun. So I'm not very brilliant as a video person, but I did film me going into the tomb of Tutankhamun, and I'm going to try and play the video now. There is no sound. I've turned the sound off, so hopefully this is going to work. Let's have a look. So, is it playing? Ah, yes, there we go. So this is the entrance to the tomb nowadays, and there's all these steps down that are covering up the ones that Howard Carter discovered. But this is the strange thing about Tutankhamun's tomb. It's not that deep. So you go down some steps, and then there's this wooden ramp, and then you keep walking down the wooden ramp, and the tomb itself is about the size of a large classroom. It's not a huge space. It's unlike any other pharaoh's tomb that I went into, and only one part of it is painted. You can see up this end, this is the north end, that this part of the wall is painted, and this is a mural with the story of Tutankhamun's journey into the underworld, the process that happens once a pharaoh is dead. There is I on the right hand side. Oh, look, down there's a treasury door. That's where Howard Carter found lots and lots of gold treasures. I was very excited about that door because obviously I was looking at exciting doors. That is Tutankhamun in the ceremony of the opening of the mouth. Every mummy is buried with a mouth open so the soul can get back in and reanimate the body. And then this, I was really amazed by this wall of monkeys. It's actually a clock. There are 12 monkeys, and each monkey is an hour in the night of the journey through the underworld. And there, of course, on the boat of the journey through the underworld is the scarab, because scarabs were really important. And this was the big sarcophagus that Tutankhamun's coffin was in. It was like nested, like Russian dolls. The rest of it's in the Cairo Museum, but the clay sarcophagus is still in his tomb. And the other thing that's in Tutankhamun's tomb, there's another treasury door, a place that was full of gold. But the other thing that was in his tomb is him. This is the mummy of Tutankhamun. This body is 3,000 years old, and it was the most incredible experience of my life to be there in that room with actual Tutankhamun. It was incredible, and it really inspired me to write this story. I just thought it was one of the most, I can't explain how it feels to stand in that tomb, which you knew Howard Carter had discovered in 1922, and there is this 3,000-year-old body. It was spectacular. I cannot, and it's really informed the book, and I got obsessed with Howard Carter's dig. I read up all about it, and I've got this animation here that I'm going to show you that's also silent, because there is an archaeologist called Nicholas Reeves, who, this is what Howard Carter discovered, the stones down into the steps. He dug all the way down, and there was a wall, and so they removed that wall, and that wall was made of rubble, and they cleared all the rubble, and they found another wall. They dug and they dug and they dug to another wall. This is what Howard Carter was doing. This is where in his diary he sees a chink through the stone, and they say, "What can you see?" And he says, "I see incredible things." This is the antechamber. There you can see that metal door that I showed you near where the mummy was laid out. That was full of gold. And then there was another wall here, and they removed that wall, and that wall leads into the north chamber where the sarcophagus was, or is now, the one that I showed you with that painted wall. And so the archaeologist Nicholas Reeve absolutely believes that this room, the north chamber, is quite small for a pharaoh's tomb, and he thinks it's because originally it was the antechamber for Nefertiti. That actually, beyond this wall that you can see with the painting on, Tutankhamun with the opening of the mouse ceremony, is actually another bricked in wall. He's done scans of this wall, and he's also proven that the painting of Tutankhamun on the wall actually has the same outline as Nefertiti. He thinks that what happened when Tutankhamun died is that they painted over Nefertiti with Tutankhamun's face, and that is actually a door in the north wall. Now, the Egyptian government can't explore this door without destroying Tutankhamun's tomb, so it might never be dug. But he believes that Nefertiti's tomb is beyond that north wall. He also thinks there are a couple of other doors that have not been discovered. His scanning equipment scans stone, and he can tell if things are hollow. So he thinks there may be more gold treasure that's never been discovered in Tutankhamun's tomb in these two small doors here. So the thing that I think is amazing is that Howard Carter discovered, obviously, this tomb, and he stopped digging once he discovered the sarcophagus of Tutankhamun. But there are these other spaces that could still have treasure in, and this is where it's believed that Nefertiti is buried. And when I discovered this, my brain just went absolutely crazy, because when I wrote Beetle Boy, the opening chapter of Beetle Boy actually makes a reference to Nefertiti, and I have always had a thing about Nefertiti. I think she's the most interesting ancient Egyptian ruler. She actually was pharaoh for a brief period of time. When a pharaoh becomes pharaoh, they take on a new name. And so one of the reasons why we didn't know Nefertiti was a pharaoh for a while is because in the hieroglyphs, she's referred to as Smenkhare. That's her pharaoh name. So once I had visited the tomb and I had all of Nicholas Reeve's ideas about where Nefertiti's tomb was buried, I was like, oh my gosh, imagine if that door in the north wall that has never been opened was a time door to ancient Egypt. And that is the thing that got me scribbling. I went straight back to the boat. You can see me here with all of my notebooks, just scribbling and scribbling ideas down. It was so inspiring. In the background there, that is the Valley of the Kings. This is literally the evening after the visit of the Valley of the Kings. I spent all the next day just writing and writing and writing. And having ideas of what this story could be. And I really, after seeing Tutankhamun's mummy, I really wanted there to be something in this story about mummification, because mummification is so cool. I don't know how much you know about the process. In my experience, people your age tend to know quite a lot. But in the process of mummification, they dry out the body, they drain the body of its fluid, and they pack it with this salt called natron, which dries out the body. And once the body's dried out, they put a slit in its side and they remove all of the organs. And the organs each go into canopic jars. Here's a canopic jar. I don't know if you can see me in the corner there, that I brought back from Egypt. Don't worry, it's got no organs in it, but they would put into the canopic jar different organs, removing them from the body. So here are the 4 canopic jars. Each one of them represents a different god. So I've written the type of head the jar's got. My jar's got a falcon head. So mine is, I can never say Quebsenef, I think that's how you say it. But there's a jackal-headed jar, there's a baboon-headed jar, and then there's a human-headed jar, which usually is made to look like the pharaoh who's being buried, or the pharaoh who was ruling when you were buried. And each jar, the god protects a different organ from your body, because obviously you are going to need them back after you've gone through the journey of the Duat, the underworld, into the afterlife. So the jackal will look after your stomach. The falcon will look after your intestines, the baboon will look after your lungs, and the human-headed one will look after your kidney. These were seen as the essential organs. But when they took the organs out of the body, they never removed the heart. And there's a reason for that, because ancient Egyptians believed that your heart was the seat of your wisdom, your memories, and your knowledge. So what we now know that the brain does, ancient Egyptians thought the heart did. And that's where the heart scarab comes in. This is the thing that really, as you can imagine, because I love beetles, the heart scarab really got me super excited. I don't know if you know what type of a beetle a scarab is, but a scarab is short for scarabaeus. That's the Latin term for this type of beetle. And a scarab is a dung beetle. And what I love about ancient Egyptian culture is that they watched dung beetles rolling their giant balls of dung along the ground. And they were like, oh, that giant ball, it's a lot like the sun going across the sky during the day. And so they thought, well, the god of the sun during the day must be a beetle. And so they created a beetle god called Khepri, who they thought rolled the sun across the sky. They were very observant and obviously well connected to the natural world. The other thing that they noticed about beetles is that beetles metamorphose. Just like a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, beetles start off as a larva. And then they create a little cocoon, and when they come out of the cocoon, they look like the adult beetle. So they go through a full transformation, which is, of course, what Egyptians thought happened when you died. They thought you went through a transformation. When you went through your journey through the afterlife and you came back to your mummified body, you became a god in their eyes. But the thing that they were worried about is in this journey through the afterlife, you are tested. You go through trials to see if you're worthy of becoming a god. So they associated beetles with transformation, with rebirth, because they'd seen them metamorphose. And they knew that humans would go through this journey through the afterlife. And there was this ceremony in the afterlife where your heart, and you can see it on this scroll here, your heart is put in scales and weighed against a feather to see if you've been a good person or not. That's another reason why it's left in the body, because it has to be weighed by Anubis here in this scroll. Now, we all know it's very difficult to live a perfect life without ever doing anything naughty. We have all done a few things that we shouldn't have done that are a bit naughty. So what the Egyptians used to do to kind of counter this is they created a heart scarab. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen with you so that I can have a big face on your board so I can show you. So this is a heart scarab. I've got here some African dung beetles, which are also scarabs. People always think that dung beetles are quite small, but as you can see, they aren't really that small at all. These are real dung beetles, male and female pair. So they would create a heart scarab like this one. This one's from the British Museum gift shop, but it's carved out of stone. And made to look like a scarab. And on the bottom, they would carve a spell. This is a better example, but it's quite difficult to show you on the camera. I don't know if you can see that. This is a spell from the Book of the Dead. And what this spell did, when they mummified you and they were wrapping you up in all those bandages, they would put the heart scarab over your heart and they would wrap it in, and the spell would take all the secrets, all the naughty things that you did in your life, and they would go into the heart scarab, and the scarab would keep your secrets, so that when your heart was measured in the underworld, It would be light as a feather because the scarab had all of your secrets and all the naughty things that you did hidden inside it. Then you'd be able to pass through the underworld and come back to your mummified body and become a god. And one of the things that I loved about writing the Golden Scarab is that in real life, I've got an actual scarab here that is, it looks like it's made of gold. I don't know if you can see that through the camera. This is a scarab, a real live beetle. Well, it's not live, it's dead in a box, but it's a real beetle that looks like it's made of gold. And I knew about that. So I was like, imagine a heart scarab, but instead of carved of basalt or some kind of rock, it was made of solid gold. I thought that would be so cool. So these are all the things, all the information, all of the things that I found really amazing that inspired this book, Hunt for the Golden Scarab. And I want to do a reading for you now from the book. And I couldn't choose whether to do something right from the very beginning, just chapter 1. But they're not in Egypt in chapter 1. So I thought I might read you just a tiny bit without, I don't think it's got any spoilers. I've tried to be careful from the bit where they actually get to the tomb. And I've had to print it out big because otherwise I have to wear glasses. And then after I've done this reading, we'll have some time for questions. So you can ask me about anything at all. If you want to ask a question, then you can tell your teacher and they can put it in the chat. But for now, listen up because I'm going to read to you. They slowed when they reached the path winding through the tombs. The gravel crunched under their feet, and Sim kept looking nervously over their shoulders. But they were alone. Each tomb was sealed with metal doors fastened with chains and padlocks. "Can you pick locks?" Sim asked his mum as they descended the steps under the canopy over Tutankhamun's tomb. "I don't need to." She inserted a key into the padlock, turned it, and it opened. "I've got skeleton keys." Pulling the metal door open, Calidora slipped inside the tomb, turning on her head torch. She ushered Jeopardy and Sim towards the dark mouth of the tomb. As he entered the antechamber, Jeopardy yanked Sim away from Tutankhamun's mummy, pointing up, reminding him of the security camera angled towards the body. They followed Calidora over the railing, dropping into the burial chamber. She kneeled opposite the north wall, studying it. "That," she pointed to a painted, bearded figure dressed in white, with a crossed flail and staff. "That is Tutankhamun, and this chap, wearing the skin of a cheetah, is I, his successor. Their names are written in the cartouches above their heads." "What's a cartouche?" Jeopardy whispered. "See that oval with a line at one end?" Sim pointed. "The shape always contains the name of a royal person or a god. It's called a cartouche. Here, I is performing the opening of the mouth ceremony on Tutankhamun's mummy," Calidora continued. "But Professor Wallace from the British Museum told me that the cartouches and the outlines of the faces of these figures have been painted over. That this," she pointed to the white figure, "was once Nefertiti, and this," she pointed to the figure in the cheetah skin, "was originally Tutankhamun. The successor always presides over the burial of the previous pharaoh. This is his evidence that this chamber was originally the entrance to Nefertiti's tomb." She looked at Sim and Jeopardy. "So, let's see if Wallace is right, shall we?" "What does it feel like when you go through a time door?" Sim asked. "Oh, it's a nice fizzy tingling," his mum replied, "like having popping candy inside your chest." She took her black wig out of her rucksack, removing her head torch, and put it on. She wriggled out of her tracksuit to reveal her white cotton dress, and she stuffed her clothes into the bag. Jeopardy did the same. With a black eyeliner pencil, Calidora drew thick black lines around her own eyes and then did Jeopardy's. "How do we look?" Jeopardy asked, as she slipped her feet into a pair of leather sandals and lifted her pocket trumpet strap over her head. Good. Sim nodded, unsure of the right response. Look after this, his mum said, passing him her bag as she stood in front of the painted mural of Tutankhamun. Sim clutched his mum's bag to his chest, moving out of the way, into an alcove, his back pressed against a small metal door that led to the treasury. Sim, when we go through, we'll be gone from this time, but time will pass for us at the same speed that it does for you. We will hurry to Nefertiti's burial chamber, but it may take us some time to locate the Golden Scarab and come back. How long will you be gone for? Sim asked, feeling a surge of fear at the thought of being left alone. Not more than 1 hour, his mum reassured him. It's night here, so it'll be night there. The tomb should be empty, but this is not an exact science. Now, if anything happens to us, she lifted a finger and looked him dead in the eye, which it won't, but if it does, you go back to Ayman. Do you understand? Sim tried to nod. Okay, are you ready, Jeopardy? You betcha. Jeopardy patted her trumpet case, looking excited. Calidora lifted the bamboo flute and played a long, mournful note. Closing her eyes, she felt her way through a series of notes until she picked out an achingly sad song. Sim felt the same dizzy sensation he'd experienced earlier in the day, as if every mote of dust in the tomb were juddering and buzzing around him. He moaned as he was struck by a blinding headache. The clashing tunes he'd heard that morning were there again, louder this time. His vision blurred as Jeopardy put her hand to the wall. It sank into the stone as the volume of the music grew. Nausea wrenched Sim's stomach and a golden light blinded him. He hugged his mum's rucksack, screwing his eyes shut as his knees buckled and he fell to the floor. The music suddenly stopped. Sim looked up. He was alone in the tomb. And that's where I leave it, because I don't want any spoilers.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Let me show self-view. There we are. Hello. That was fantastic. Honestly, what a lovely trip you did. Honestly, I'd love to go to Egypt. I'm so jealous of that, and going to Tutankhamun's tomb. We've had loads of questions in already. I had some emailed before, and people have been rattling away on the Q&A function. So let's go through those. The first one I received, so I'm going to go to them first, was Hastings Hill Academy in Sunderland. Lovely question. What is your best bit of advice for young writers like ourselves?
So here's the thing. One of the things that I really struggled with when I used to write is that I would start a story, I'd get very excited, and then I'd kind of run out of steam. I'd get halfway through and I wouldn't really know where I was going, and I would go blank, and then I would think it was because the story was rubbish, and I would throw it away. This is because I hadn't done any thinking before. What I like to do when I write books, and I do this with Post-it notes, I've got loads of Post-it notes all over my desk of lots of different colours and sizes. To the left of me that you can't see, I have a giant board, and it's a bit like a big whiteboard. And what I do is I divide the story up. I do it into 5 acts, but you can do beginning, middle and end. And I think of all cool things that I want to happen in the story, and I put them on a Post-it note, so like Tutankhamun's tomb, and I'll stick it on the wall. And then I move them around until I've created the shape of a story without having written anything. So I always know how the story's going to end. I know the cool things I want to go in this story. I don't always know where they should go, but I create a plot from with Post-it notes, and then I start writing because I know where I'm going. And then I don't stop. I keep going until I get to the end, because you have to let your first version of the story be rubbish, and it's going to have mistakes, and that's totally cool. My first version of a story, I don't let anyone read because I spell everything wrong. And so, but I always know where I'm going. And so it helps me to plot it out with Post-it notes first. So that would be my advice.
Fantastic. So Lucy Holloway, so Miss Holloway's class at Nettleston. What made you want to be an author originally, right at the start?
Well, So fun fact, I was really rubbish at writing at school and I didn't want to be a writer at all. Most people I know who are writers, they really wanted to be a writer ever since they were young, but I really still struggle with grammar, like spelling and punctuation are the worst for me. And at school, I was really bad at it. I used to fail tests and stuff like that. And I didn't think I could be a writer, but I loved reading. I read everything. And so I wanted to be a storyteller. And because I thought I was rubbish at writing, I went into theatre because I thought, well, I don't need to write anything. I can learn, I can read it, learn it off by heart, and then tell stories on a stage. And then I don't have to worry about the writing bit because I thought that that was really difficult. But when I got into theatre, I discovered in theatre so many different ways of making up stories that were nothing to do with spelling and punctuation and grammar. And I realised there's a difference between storytelling and writing good, clear English. And the thing that I'm passionate about is telling a good story. And I can do that just talking. I don't need to write a word down. And obviously, I'm quite old now. I've got a lot better at spelling and punctuation, but I'm still insecure about it. So I didn't actually start thinking about writing a book till I was in my 30s. And that's when I discovered beetles were totally the coolest creatures on the entire planet. And I fell in love with them so hard that I wanted to write a book sharing my passion about beetles. So beetles inspired me in my 30s, but it was because I'd been involved in theatre for many years that I had the courage to have a go. So yeah, that's what turned me into a writer, theatre.
Brilliant, brilliant. And the other question from Lucy's class in Nettleston, which book of yours, and this is a repeated question across, honestly, I can't tell you how many times I've been asked it, which book of yours is your favorite?
Oh, it's a very hard question to answer because I've loved making each and every book, and each and every book is different, and I love the characters and the whole experience of each book is it's a bit like being asked which of my children is my favorite. Obviously, I don't have a favorite, but I will say this: if you were to put them all on a conveyor belt and you were an evil villain and you were going to put them all in the chipper and you were like, ah ha ha, I'm going to destroy everything you've ever written, you can only save one. I would save Beetle Boy. It taught me about insects. It took me 10 years to write. It taught me how to write a book. It's the weirdest, most unusual story I probably will ever write. And it's given me this entire career. So that book is particularly special. And if you enjoy Hunt for the Golden Scarab, please go find Beetle Boy because they pair very well together. I think you'll enjoy Beetle Boy if you like Hunt for the Golden Scarab.
Brilliant, great plug. Right, Cuddington and Dinton School, Victoria Holdwood's class. Are you continuing the Twitch series, or is that finished
Oh,
now?
so the Twitcher series is an adventure for each season, and there are only four seasons, and so there are only four books. I get a lot of fan mail asking me to write another one, but I feel like four is the right number for that series, so it is complete. I'm afraid I won't be writing another one. Sorry.
Oh, um, that's okay. But you're writing a new series, so that's great. Is there anyone particularly who inspired you to write yourself?
This is a really nerdy answer, and I apologize to every child out there who hears this, but the person who inspired me to write was Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, that dude that died 400 years ago and wrote plays that are really hard to read. And the reason why he inspired me to write, I love Shakespeare and I really enjoyed Shakespeare at school. I had a great teacher. But when I was an adult, I worked in Shakespeare's Globe Theatre and I discovered that we've only got two bits of writing that Shakespeare actually wrote with his own quill. And one of them is his will. He signed every page of his will. He spelled his name differently on each page. And we've got one speech that we know he wrote because the handwriting matches the signature on his will. And he does not use one piece of punctuation at all. So Shakespeare gave me the courage to have a go because I thought, well, everyone, all the teachers all my life have told me he's the best writer ever in the history of English. And yet he didn't spell words consistently and he didn't use punctuation. And that made me feel courageous because I thought, well, I think I can tell a good story. I'm not good at spelling and I'm not good at punctuation, but Shakespeare gave me the courage to try. So yeah, him.
Brilliant answer. Alison Boosted from Tudhoe Collier. Now they've ordered more books than any other school, so we must give them a little plug. What made you write the Highland Falcon Adventures? What was your inspiration for
Ah,
those?
so I am a mum. I have two sons, and both my sons absolutely love trains. When they were really little, they'd have Brio wooden trains, and they would have Lego trains, and we'd go and see heritage steam railways, and we'd travel on steam trains. And then we used to read Thomas the Tank Engine at bedtime when they were really little. But when they went to school and they were kind of in year 3 and 4 and they started to do independent reading, uh, my oldest son came to me and was asking, like, oh, I want to read a book about trains. And the only books that I could find that had trains in were fantasy books. So the trains would be like flying in the sky and driven by unicorns and powered by glitter. And my son was really not very happy with this. He wanted real facts about real trains that existed in the real world that he could maybe go on one day. And I thought, gosh, someone really needs to write that because I know there are children out there who'd really enjoy it. And I loved Agatha Christie stories, their grown-up books, their detective stories, and she loved to stage a murder on a train. So I thought I had this idea, but I didn't think I could do it. And then I was working at the time at the National Theatre with a chap called Sam Sedgman, who is one of my best friends, and I was his boss. And he was a lot like a grown-up version of my son's. He loved trains, and I was talking to him about this problem that I thought these adventures on trains should exist, but I didn't think I could write them on my own. And he was like, me, I'll help, I'll help. And that's how the whole series got born. We had a big conversation, and the Highland Falcon Thief in particular, we really wanted to start the whole series with something that really celebrated heritage steam railways in England. The United Kingdom, because they go all the way up to Scotland and out to Wales. So the whole United Kingdom and trains like the Flying Scotsman. And so that was where we started. And then we just branched out into many different famous trains from all around the world.
Brilliant, brilliant. Listen, we're going to run a couple of minutes over. I've got a couple more questions. So, still with Tudhoe Collier and Miss Boosted's class, who is your favourite character you have ever created?
Oh,
It's a tough one.
gosh. Uh, Favorite character that I've ever created. I'm not going to pick any of the main characters because I love all the main characters and quite often I'm very emotionally attached to the main characters. So I can't choose between Darkus and Beetle Boy and Twitch because like that is impossible. That's like choosing between my kids. So I'm going to go to the cast of characters around all of the main characters. It's always fun to create a villain. Lucretia Cutter in the Beetle Boy books was just such a pleasure to write. But my favorite character, the one that I love the most, and it just made me laugh every time I wrote her, and I adore her, is Beryl Brash, who is in Murder on the Safari Star. She's a romance novelist who's going on this train journey. She's based on the actress Miriam Margolyes, who plays Professor Sprout in the Harry Potter movies. She's all kind of bosoms and curls and bluster, and she always says inappropriate things. And I would love to bring her back at some point in another book because she's unforgettable. So yeah, it's hard between the villain Lucretia Cutter or Beryl Brash, the romance novelist.
Brilliant. And listen, I'm going to save the last question to Anya at Chandler's Ridge. How many books will there be in the Time Key series?
So, this is the first one. The second one is already written. I will be sharing or revealing the cover for the second one in about 4 or 5 weeks, I think. The second book comes out in September. It's called The Legend of Viking Thunder. And
Ooh,
it's already like I'm being sent the internal illustrations at the moment and they look amazing. So there will be a second book in the series out in September. I'm currently writing the third one. Can't tell you about that at all. My publisher asked for 4 books to begin with, but if you guys love the hunt for the Golden Scarab and you want more, and everyone's buying the books and reading the books and saying the books are great, I would like to write 8. So, and the reason why I'd like to write 8, because a theme that is returned to again and again in these stories is music. And in the Western musical octave, there are 8 notes, and I would love one adventure for each note. So hopefully I'll get to write 8, but at the moment I'm definitely writing 4. It just depends whether you guys like them or not.
Brilliant. Well, honestly, on first outings, I think they're brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So, listen, these are the books. Well, this is the book, and those are the little bits of merchandise you'll all get. Should separate those. So remember, get them ordered today. There's this little special offer that's on, and I think the schools that are leading are, you've got Tudhoe, Colliery, Cuddington, and Dinton. So they will get this, unless Chandler's Cross, High Downs, Nettleston, Bidbury, and Castledyke, and St James is as well, all very close. So to get that those two posters that we've got. Without further ado, Maya, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute honour, and thank you to all the schools who joined in. These are so much fun, and we've got a load of them coming up in the near future. So do look out for those emails. But Maya, thank you for your time. We're going to see you later, aren't we?
Yes, absolute pleasure to be here. I hope you all have a fantastic Monday and you enjoy reading Hunt for the Golden Scarab.
Thank you so much. Cheers, and everyone.